This is our chipped out little section of ebony. It's very small. I have the flashlight on, so you can see the flashlight on there. Trying to get it from a few angles. You can see around the bottom of the nut where the paint chipped out. So it looks like what happened was the person who changed out the nut on this guitar probably hammered it out from this side down, and in doing so chipped out the fretboard in that spot. It looks like we have two basic areas where the chip out happened. Here, I'll get my light set down in a way that totally does not illuminate what we're looking at here, but just so I can point. Here's our main chip out. Looks like there's a secondary one around the front of the nut here that may just be finish. I'm going to have to throw on the old reading glasses and get a closer look here. Also, I'll pull the nut off. You can see the nut right now is only held in by the pressure of the strings, and there's a piece of paper under there to act as a shim because the nut is ironically a little too low. So I'm going to have to find out a little bit more about the shape of this, and then I'll make my plan. Alright, you can see I have slid the high E string over. What I'm going to introduce is something everyone needs to have, which is a piece of Silly Putty, which I'm just squishing right into that spot. And I pull it straight back out, like that. And what we have here is a picture of what our crack looks like here, or what our missing piece is. So this right here is the fretboard. This right here is the neck. You can see it. It's along the profile of the neck. And then here you can see this little spot. That is where the fretboard broke off. You can also see this little knob right there where it also chipped out a little bit. So we may have to do a two-pronged approach on this. What I'm going to first and foremost do is, on the bigger piece, I want to make the base of it fairly consistently flat. I don't want to take much material out, but I do want to have it be a consistent space to fill, because we have a controlled surface here, and a controlled surface in the nut slot. So if we can have a flat adhesive or flat surface to adhere to on the underside, we can actually cut a piece of ebony that's slightly too big, glue it into place, bring it down to match here, here, and here. So it's really just getting that other area, and then of course this to match. So that's what we're looking at here. So once again, taking a look at the molding that we made. And you know what? Sometimes it helps to get another perspective on the molding that you made. So you just squish it back up, pop it out, make another one. See what you're looking at. Curl it up with your finger like an idiot. It's close, but it kind of notches out a little bit. I will see how my patch ebony works with this too. Sometimes it works to cut little strips and just glue little strips in there and build it up with that. This is a little bigger than I would like to pack with powder. That's another one, is packing with ebony sawdust and then adding glue to it. I usually don't like to do that on something this big, but I may do that around the repair after I glue in the main little patch there. So we shall see. This little nub right there in front of the nut, that may be a candidate for packing with powder, but we will see. Okay, after further review, a couple more instances of the old putty placement here. Just really trying to get a good sense of the profile of this. I have decided that I'm going to try and do a little bit of surgery instead of sanding it out. What we have here, I got the old high power readers on. I'm going to do a very slight cut right there. Then I'm going to come in from the side and just peel off a little bit of the ebony to try and get this as flat as I possibly can. So this is the first step right here. Just lining this up. You can see not a lot of material coming out. Just running very, very gently. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on there. I want it all to come out fairly flat. As flat as I can. I got to get this stupid nut out of the way, of course. I'm coming in. Just like that. Okay, we're pretty close to nice and flat. I can see just a little bit of irregularity right there. So I'm just gonna, I do not want this little chisel jumping on me. Okay. That's looking really close. Really close. That is really close. Okay, so we can see on the putty now, we're getting it really close to a flat surface. Now, what I'm going to do is take my file and just file it just a little bit. What I don't want to do, this is why I didn't approach this with sandpaper. Instead I used a chisel, because I wanted the flat blade of the chisel to play to my advantage. So the flat edge could lay here and not allow me to round it over so easily. If you're filing, you can very easily file in sort of a rounded motion like that, and so it's really easy to round over something that you want to have perfectly straight. So now I have my flat mill file, which appears to be the largest file on earth. I am very carefully gauging the angle and I am taking minimal wood off of the fretboard, just the absolute least that I can take off. Now, what I have then is, we'll take another quick look here. What I should have is something that looks pretty flat. And what I have here is something that looks pretty flat. It's really hard to kind of do this under the camera here, but you can see it's pretty flat there. Flat enough, I think, that I should be able to cut a small patch piece, and I might just do a quick little touch right there. Get that glued in. It's not surgical perfection, but it's as close as a guy can get with most wood tools. So, or at least as close as I can get. Someone else might be able to get closer. So we didn't take off hardly any wood, just a couple of little shavings. I mainly want to make sure that this is nice and as square as I can get it, that this is nice and flat, and that the piece that I cut, I don't care if it pops up a little bit, I don't care if it goes back into the nut slot a little bit, I don't care if it comes out this way a little bit. I just needed for it to be tight against there and against this little area that we scraped off. Okay, now I have my little patch block cut here. You can see that will fit in right there, right in there. So before I start busting out the glue, going to do a little test fit, a little dry run. Not sure if this is the origin of the term dry run, but it feels like it should be. There's that right there. This would come around the top. The other option is to figure out clamping or just to hold the thing. And now I have the secret weapon of luthiers right here, which is cyanoacrylate glue, which is an amazing substance, but it is, quite frankly, generally known under the less glorious name of super glue. It has to be a popular choice for guitar repair because it dries very hard and quickly and clear. Now, what I generally do rather than squeezing it on, I usually use my fourth favorite tool in the world, which is utility knife blade. Help me get just a little skosh of this stuff right in the bonding area here. I just use the corner of the blade like that. Okay. Cap this puppy off. Stuff dries quickly, especially if it's not the good old water thin variety. So then I grab this and pop it right into place. And just like calling tech support, you get a little bit of hold time here. I'm just going to hold that for a moment. Now, what causes cyanoacrylate, aka super glue, to harden? Moisture acts as an accelerant, so when you have dry wood, obviously, there's not a lot of moisture involved there. Little known fact, if you accidentally get it in your mouth, it will actually turn to acrylic plastic before you can swallow it. I have a story I could tell about how I know this, but are you going to stay there? Normally, I don't trust it this much, but that's a very, very, very small patch piece. And let's see. I think we're good. I'm just going to let that dry for a little while. Okay, a little time has passed. Our glue is dried. So I'm going to start cutting away at this guy. Put a little tape around it here to protect the finish. Well, not really the finish, I guess, but to protect around the actual repair itself so I don't mar the fretboard if I slip a little bit. I will mar it if I slip a lot, but the goal is to not slip a lot. So you can see I have this little knobber here. I'm just gonna sit and cut away at it. One thing I have always liked about ebony is that it's a nice wood to work in. It's hard, which is why it makes nice fretboards, but it has an interesting grain structure where it's very workable. I'm switching to the old utility knife here. Just carving away at the old guy. There we are. See, I'm coming in at a bit of an angle here. Almost a bit like whittling. Taking a little bit off the side. It'll come off quickly. You don't have to get very aggressive with it. at all. It's looking a bit like an epilogue here. What I'm doing at this point, as you can see, I've taken the tape off. I used a chisel and a utility knife blade, and you can see there's a little bit of chatter there that I'll have to sand out. But if we do the old Silly Putty test here again, we can see that there isn't really that much missing there. There's still a little bit of a void in the finish on the side. I will address that when I go ahead and do the back of the neck. See, because part of this whole guitar process is that I'm going to be thinning down the neck. So I'm going to be taking that finish off anyway. So here, just a little bit of sandpaper. I'm going along, just sanding out these spots. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. It's hard, the actual stand that I have. I'm using my phone for this because my YouTube channel budget isn't exactly huge, or existent. Let's be honest here. I'm sure I threw you all with this huge production quality, but yeah. So I'm just going to do a quick little round over there, and this is just a piece of 600 grit paper. I'm just kind of tidying it up a bit. You can see, for the most part, our repair has pretty well disappeared into the rest of the wood. If I just wet this down a little bit. There's a little bit of a seam right there. You can see just very, very vaguely. But it's not bad. It's not bad. Here's the old nut right in place. Here I'm going to do a little bit more sand. I don't want to sand it a ton. And honestly, I don't really even need to round it over much, because it's not like rounding it over on this spot is really even a worthwhile thing to do, because it's not even really on the playing surface. If you look at some other spots in the fretboard, this is the other thing too, is the whole fretboard itself isn't exactly perfect. It's far from perfect. So I'll just keep just feathering this in. And now if I was trying to be a little bit more aggressive with it, just feathering this in, if I was trying to be a little bit more aggressive with it, I would be using a block right here, but we're using such fine grit paper and a light touch so that the risk of cupping this out is not particularly high. Now, just for fun, I'm going to take a little bit of lem oil. I'm just going to put a little bit right there, a little bit right there, and we rub that in a little bit. Now, some of this won't absorb, because lem oil doesn't absorb very well into super glue. But there we have a repair. I'm just going to pop this out of the stand. Here we have a repair that is largely imperceptible without getting in really, really close. Like I said, there's a little bit on the side here that you can see, and I will address this little bit when I am removing the finish from the side of the neck and fixing this part here. But all in all, came out pretty well. So next up is going to be, you can see there's this tiny little bit of a divot right there, but that isn't massively different than some of the other little divots there are on this fretboard. Divot right there. I mean, this is wood. It's not always perfect. So, anywho, that's how it's looking right now. Give her a little shine up. And next up is going to be getting the nut files and cutting the new nut. Thanks for watching.